Have you ever noticed something strange? The loudest person in the room usually wants attention. But the quietest person? They're often the one everyone watches. And here's the disturbing part. The people with the most influence rarely announce it. In fact, some of the most powerful people you'll ever meet speak the least. Why? And what do they know that everyone else doesn't? Stay until the end, because the final reason is the one most people never realize until it's too late. Imagine a meeting. 10 people sit around a table. One person talks constantly. They interrupt. They explain. They defend every opinion. Meanwhile, one person barely says a word. They listen, observe, take mental notes. At first, nobody notices them. But when they finally speak, the room goes silent. Why? Because scarcity creates value. When someone talks all the time, every word becomes cheaper. When someone speaks rarely, every word feels important. Think about it. Gold is valuable because it's rare. Silence works the same way. But that's only the surface. The real reason quiet people hold power is much darker. Most people think power comes from speaking. Actually, power often comes from learning. And learning requires silence. Here's what happens when you stay quiet. People start talking a lot. They reveal their fears, their weaknesses, their insecurities, their intentions. Without realizing it, they hand you information. And information is power. Imagine two poker players. One shows all his cards. The other reveals nothing. Who has the advantage? Exactly. Most people destroy their own influence because they're desperate to be understood. Powerful people understand something different. The less people know about you, the harder you are to control. But information alone isn't what makes quiet people powerful. The next reason explains why some silent people can completely dominate a room without saying anything. A strange psychological phenomenon happens when someone remains calm and quiet. People automatically assume they know something. It's called perceived authority. Think about the last argument you witnessed. One person became emotional, raised their voice, talked faster. The other remained calm. Who looked stronger? Usually the calm one. Not because they were right. Because composure signals control, and control signals power. Most people cannot stay calm under pressure. When someone can, it creates an invisible aura of strength. That's why experienced negotiators often pause before responding. That's why elite leaders don't rush to fill every silence. Silence creates tension, and whoever controls the tension often controls the interaction. But wait, there's another reason quiet people are dangerous. And it has nothing to do with confidence. Humans are naturally curious. We want answers. We want certainty. We want to know what others are thinking. Quiet people deny us that certainty. And our brains hate uncertainty. So what happens? We start filling the gaps ourselves. We imagine. We speculate. We project. In many cases, people give quiet individuals far more status than they actually have. Not because of what they say. Because of what they don't say. Mystery is powerful. Think about movies. The most interesting character is often not the one talking constantly. It's the one whose intentions remain unknown. The same principle works in real life. The less predictable you become, the harder you are to manipulate. And this leads to perhaps the biggest mistake people make when trying to gain respect. A mistake that quietly destroys their influence every single day. Many people believe respect comes from convincing others. So they explain, defend, justify, over-explain, again and again. But something strange happens. The more you explain yourself, the less powerful you appear. Why? Because excessive explanation often signals a need for approval, and people can sense it. Quiet people understand something important. Not every accusation deserves a response. Not every opinion deserves a defense. Not every misunderstanding needs correction. Sometimes silence sends a stronger message than words ever could. And that's incredibly uncomfortable for people who crave validation. But here's where things become really interesting. Some of history's most influential people used silence as a weapon. The best negotiators know a secret. After making an offer, stay silent. Why? Because silence creates pressure. Most people rush to fill the gap, and in doing so, they often reveal more than intended. The same thing happens in everyday life. Someone asks a provocative question. Most people react immediately. Quiet people pause, think, observe, then respond. That pause changes everything, because reactions are emotional, responses are deliberate, and deliberate people are harder to manipulate. The person who controls their emotions often controls the outcome, but there is one final reason quiet people possess extraordinary power, and it might completely change how you view silence. True power isn't control over others, it's control over yourself, and that's where most people fail. Anyone can talk, anyone can react, anyone can argue, but remaining calm, remaining patient, remaining silent when your ego wants attention. That's difficult. Silence requires discipline. Discipline requires self-control, and self-control is one of the strongest forms of power that exists. Think about it. If someone can provoke you whenever they want, who really has the power? You? Or them? The quietest people often understand this better than anyone. They don't need to win every argument. They don't need the last word. They don't need constant validation. Because their confidence isn't dependent on outside approval, and that's what makes them powerful. So why does the quietest person often have the most power? Because they observe while others reveal. Because they remain calm while others react. Because they create mystery while others overshare. Because they listen while others compete to be heard. And most importantly, because they have learned to control themselves. The loudest voice often demands attention. But true power rarely needs to announce itself. The next time you're in a room full of people, pay attention to the person speaking the least. You may discover they're the one who understands everyone else the most. And sometimes, that's the greatest advantage a person can have. If this made you see silence differently, comment. Silence is power. And subscribe for more videos on dark psychology, human behavior, and the hidden truths most people discover too late.